Don't do pharmacy. Here's why. Quick pause. If you like my videos, make sure to like, comment, subscribe so you can stay updated for all my new videos on life, rewiring, success, entrepreneurship, and sometimes maybe in pharmacy too. And also for those impatient people who can't watch a whole full long video, make sure to check out the timestamps. Although I really encourage you, if you're taking your career seriously, you're going to watch every single bit of this because it has everything that you need to know about pharmacy. If you're not willing to do that, then hey, you probably shouldn't do pharmacy to begin with. So in today's video, I'm going to talk about 3 different things on why you should not do pharmacy, or at least things to consider if you are going to do pharmacy so you can plan ahead. All right, let's dive into it. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is decrease in job opportunities. Now, this is really important because having a 6-figure paycheck all depends on whether you can find a job that will pay that much to you. And there's been talk of saturation. You're probably wondering, well, is this true? So I'm going to be kind of diving into how you can find out this data to see if it's relevant for you at this sort of time. And rather than just give a blanket statement and saying like, right now in 2020, there's no jobs in pharmacy. Well, you might be watching this at a later date and you might be like, hey, what is it now? So I'm going to be diving into something called the US Bureau of Labor Statistics, which is one of the most important sites that you can look at. Now, I'm not sure how often they publish it. I can't remember, but it has some really great stuff in here. So if we take a look at the US Bureau of Labor Statistics, we'll see a few things. We'll see the median pay of a pharmacist over here, which is about $130K per year, but that's actually been decreasing from what I've been hearing as well, which is about $61 per hour, right? They also talk about the number of jobs available at the time of the survey and the job outlook within the next 10 years. And take a look at this. It's 0%, so little or no change. There's almost going to be no increase in jobs over the next 10 years. And that really supports the argument for saturation in the market as well. All right. And let's take a look at the employment change, -100. So there's going to be even fewer jobs in the future. What is it due to? Could be automation, could be a lot of different things, but that's what, the government is predicting, which I would trust their statistics as well. Now, there's more information like state data and all that, which you can look at yourself. But the truth is, when we're thinking about typical jobs, well, there's not a lot out there. And if you're kind of curious about kind of the number of jobs out there, let's take a closer look as well. So 2018, there's about 300K jobs in 2018. Most of them are in drugstores, hospitals, and there's also non-traditional jobs as well, but something to at least consider. So, for most people who are going into pharmacy, be prepared that you might not be able to find a job once you get out because of the statistical data that we're looking at. What's really interesting is that I actually have the statistics for the old Bureau of Labor statistics. And it says that it was 6% that there were going to be 17,000 more jobs by 2026. But you can tell that things have changed relatively drastically. And why is that? Well, one of the things that people are saying is that there are a lot of schools pumping out students. And how do you figure this number out? Where do you look at the facts? Well, let's kind of dive into it because this is a little tricky one, right? So if you want to see how many schools there are in the US, there's a site called the American Association of Colleges of Pharmacy. And they said that there's 143 base college of schools of pharmacy with accreditation or full candidate status. And there's a few schools that are pending candidates as well. And more interesting, it talks about the number of students that are being pumped out every year. So when we take a look at in 2017 to 18, about 15,000 degrees were handed out. Now, I want to kind of dive into this even more. How can we get more accurate data? Well, there is an exam called the NAPLEX. I actually don't know what the NAPLEX stands for, but it's a pharmacy test that everyone needs to take if you want to be a pharmacist. And every year they actually release the school passing rates. So if we take a look over here, there's a bunch of attempts of people, how many people are attempting to take this test. And I think that is a good indication because you need to get licensed in order to do that, right? So basically, out of all the graduates from the ACPE accredited programs, there's about 15,000 people who have attempted to actually take the test as well. And there's an 88% pass rate as well. So that gives you a good idea of how many people are looking for jobs. And keep in mind, look at this data that we looked at before. There's going to be little or no change to jobs over the next 10 years. And that's why it's really important to look at the data for this. So unfortunately, if you're one of these students, you're struggling for finding a job, some of the best advice to have is obviously network, right? But that can take a while. But usually you can start off at a staffing agency as well. Like there's a lot of pharmacy agencies looking for contract work. You can be an independent contractor and you'll work your way into the system. That's probably the easiest barrier of entry to actually find a job. Now, also, knock on wood, there are states like Florida with emerging opportunities, with expanding roles. But the number one thing that you got to realize is you should not make your decisions based off future predictions. Really important. While there are states that are expanding their roles with pharmacy, the truth is you should never base your future based off of future promises as well. It's just unreliable. Now, is this saying that you shouldn't do pharmacy? Well, for most people, I would say you should probably reconsider a different career that has better jobs as well. But, you know, let's say if you can finesse it, maybe you have killer connections, you're guaranteed a job after pharmacy school because you got a homie hookup or something, and you're planning for the strategy in 10 years where you can absolutely get a job. Which leads me to my next point on why you probably should reconsider or not do pharmacy at all. Pharmacy burnout. And this is a very real thing as well. I personally experienced this myself, but again, let's take a look at the data first. This is really interesting. There was actually an article published May 15th, 2020, which kind of took a look at pharmacist burnout and stress. And one of the interesting statistics was recent survey results reveal that 61.2% of pharmacists report experiencing a high level of burnout in practice, which is one of the highest rates among healthcare professionals. If you don't believe me, take a look at forums like Student Doctor Network. Even take a look at Reddit Pharmacy as well. And more importantly, take a look at YouTube. Maybe you'll see a few videos of yours truly and some of my friends like RX Comedy and other people who have kind of talked about this burnout in practice. What was more interesting about this article was that this rate is higher than surgeons, oncologists, and emergency medicine practitioners. Isn't that crazy? And so when I saw this, I was like, why is this the case? Why are so many pharmacists like myself, why were we so burnt out? Because burnout is a very real thing. But you might be asking, what does something like burnout look like? Well, the first thing is emotional exhaustion. So in this article, they said emotional exhaustion is measured up with statements like, I feel emotionally drained from work, or I feel used up at the end of work days. And this is a very real thing. I used to feel this all the time. And when I first graduated, a lot of my friends would have stories of just crying in their car because it was so rough. You're dealing with so many different people. You're dealing with a lot of demands. And we'll be diving a little bit into the reasons why you feel so emotionally exhausting. And the truth is, you're dealing with humans, you're dealing with people. So when people are angry at you, they're gonna take it out on you, whether it's right or wrong. When people are going through a death of a loved one, that's gonna rub off on you too, especially if you had a really great connection with your patients like I did sometimes. I remember there was a few patients where, you know, I would take care of them and then all of a sudden I noticed that they weren't coming anymore. And then their family would come in and just tell me like, hey, Kevin, thank you for everything that you did, but blah, blah, blah. They're no longer with us. And while, you know, it is kind of heartbreaking to see the end of someone, especially with cancer patients who are near the end of their life, go through that enough times and go through the stresses of every single day, and it really gets to you. The second thing that burnout might look like is lack of personal accomplishment. Like I was saying earlier, when you go into pharmacy, there's no better feeling than walking into a pharmacy, feeling like you have a lot of impact. But over time, you just feel capped out or tapped out. And you feel like, am I really making a difference? And in pharmacy, we have this running joke where we say pharmacists are just glorified baggers and cashiers. But there's a bit of truth to that. And the third thing is really depersonalization. And this is probably the most severe, where it's like, you're saying stuff like, hey, I've become more callous toward people since I took the job. I worry that this job is hardening me emotionally, where you just feel disconnected from people. And I actually personally went through this too, where it wasn't that I didn't care, but I realized that being in something like the pharmacy was just turning me into a person I didn't want to be, turning into an asshole. And it was not because I didn't care, but it was because of the systems, resources that I had as well. That was a huge source of burning me out. If you think it's just me, one of the things that I would highly recommend you guys to do is just talk to a pharmacist who has been doing this for 10 plus years. See how they feel about it. One thing that I noticed when I talk to people who are 10 years ahead of me was that they look dead. They look like they're on their last legs. They look so unsatisfied with their life, and they're just checking in just for a job. And that's not the type of healthcare professionals that you want in the industry. But you can't blame them because it's kind of the system we have. Now that we understand what burnout is, let's take a look at the risk factors for burnout. And whether you get a pharmacy job or you're looking through pharmacy jobs, you should really ask yourself these 6 different questions. The workload. So are the job requirements within reasonable human limits? Second thing, control. Are the individual roles established in a way that avoids role conflict and role ambiguity? Third, reward. Are provided rewards sufficient for compensation? 4, community. Are there sufficient opportunities for social interaction? 5, fairness. Are workplace decisions perceived as fair and equitable? And the last one is values. Are ideals and motivations of the job consistent with those of the workers? Now, let's break these down. When I was in community pharmacy, the workload was just getting to that point where it would be so hard to finish your work. No matter how fast you were, it would just be so overwhelming. The phones are always ringing. If you ever talk to a community pharmacist, oftentimes they don't have enough time to eat. They don't have enough time to go to the bathroom. It's really discouraging when you're thinking about, oh shit, do I fill this prescription or can I run to the toilet because I haven't gone in a few hours? That's not healthy. That's not a great lifestyle to have as a pharmacist, but it's expected for pharmacists not to take breaks. And that's very dangerous, especially when we're dealing with high impact medications. Second thing, control. And when I think about control, I think about, do pharmacists feel like they have control over the pharmacy? And I would argue that oftentimes you feel like you don't always have control because, corporate, they micromanage you sometimes with overall performance metrics and all these business things. And also you're playing a little bit of secretary, you're playing a bit of pharmacist, you're playing part lawyer, you're playing like part logistics, and you're just spread so thin that you're kind of like, dude, what do I do as a pharmacist? Third thing, reward. Are rewards sufficient for compensation, especially with all the stress you go through nowadays and the level of malpractice that you have? Because yes, you can get sued as a pharmacist with pay going down, trending downwards. It's hard to say that financially are you compensated. Also, a community for the social interaction. You basically don't even have time. We didn't even have time to even do a 5-minute meeting in the morning to just like, hey guys, this is the plan for today. This is what we need to get done. We didn't even have that. It's just like people are already waiting outside, start filling, and we got to save hours as well. And that's not you can't really build a good team at work. Even with your patients, you don't really get that much social interaction as well. That's something really important that you have to consider. Fairness. If you've worked for any corporate company, a lot of times there are corporate politics that you have to play. And it's just like, dude, that was the worst. I hated that. It's not fair, but that is the game that you have to play in any corporate role. And then finally, the values. Are the ideals and motivations of the job consistent with those of the workers? And this comes back to reality versus expectations, because here I was pushing these metrics, these business metrics. I was really good. I was trying my best to build a relationship with my patients, but at the end of the day, I didn't feel like I could really impact them the way that I wanted to as well. And that to me was one of the hardest things about doing pharmacy as well. If we were to look at the article again, some of the factors to burnout are time constraints, lack of control, conflict with leaderships, technology limitations, and there's a lot of demands on a pharmacist. This is a lot for one person. So that's something that you guys should consider, because burnout is very real. And in another video, I can even talk about depression and suicide within healthcare as well. Like I said earlier, when you check the US Bureau of Labor statistics, most pharmacists are getting paid $61.58 per hour, or about $130K per year. Now, while this sounds good on paper, one thing that you got to realize is it depends on location of where you are. And one of the things that has been happening, since there's so much supply in terms of pharmacists, one of the things that these major chains are starting to do is pay their pharmacists less and less and less. Because here's the thing, would you want someone who's more seasoned, or would you rather take a new grad who's in a lot of financial debt because of pharmacy school and willing to take the job for 40 to 50 per hour? And this has really dropped pharmacy to under 6 figures sometimes. While most people would think most pharmacists get 40 hours, this isn't always the case. A lot of times full-time might be considered 32, or maybe they'll put you at part-time and not pay you benefits. And that is something really important to just consider, especially with the saturation. But let's take a look at the average debt that you take in pharmacy. And I found this great article by NerdWallet, which you should take a look at. Class of 2019 pharmacy school graduates with student loan debt owed about $170K on average, which is a lot of money. Just to give you an idea of what you'll be paying, if you have a $170K student loan balance with about 6.25% average interest, right, on a 10-year federal repayment plan, you're basically paying almost $2K per month. $2K per month. And again, if we do some quick math, if we're making about $130,000 per year, divide that over 12, what? You're bringing in about, let's say, $10K per month. Now, just to give you a good idea of the cash flow in terms of this, let's break it down. Let's say you're one of those new grad pharmacists and can only find a job for $50 an hour. You work 32 hours a week, right? So that's about $1,600 for 1 week times 4, which is about $6,400. Let's take $6,400, divide that, and you got to pay tax. So let's assume, I don't know, with total withholdings, let's assume 30%. So what does that leave you with? About $4,500. Now subtract 2,000, that gives you what? About $2,500 to live on. So it's not that much to live on as well. You might have rent, especially if you're in an expensive city or anything like that. But you can slowly see that things add up really quickly and it's really tough. If you want to buy a property, it's probably not going to be until after your pharmacy debt is paid. And sometimes, especially if you go to a private school, maybe if you go somewhere like USC, it can cost you a lot more than that. For example, in this article, they said that the student loan debt is higher if you attend private school, which is about $200K, and lower if you are attending a state school as well. And what was really interesting was that compared to other healthcare professionals, pharmacists have less student debt on average. One thing you definitely got to consider is, can you get a job? And is the pay increasing over time or decreasing over time? And that's something that you have to decide for yourself. And trick question, it's probably decreasing at this moment in time. So now that I covered these 3 points of job opportunity, burnout, and return on investment, should you still do pharmacy? Is pharmacy going to change? Are we totally screwed as pharmacists? And you got to realize things like job demand and all is very cyclical. There's going to be ebb and flow, because if people like me are saying, hey, don't do pharmacy because it's saturated, over time, less and less people will not go into pharmacy because they'll build that reputation, and we might have a shortage again. But who knows? You can't depend on that because that's just speculation, right? But let's say if you are a student, you're kind of thinking about, okay, Kevin, maybe I don't want to do pharmacy, or if I really want to do pharmacy, what should I do? What are some solutions? What are some sexy solutions? And so I have 3 things for you. You have 3 different choices that I would probably recommend. First things first, I would consider choosing a different healthcare career altogether. If you're really dead set on healthcare, your parents are telling you like, yo, you gotta do healthcare, let's kind of go over some of the other options as well. Which brings me back into the Bureau of Labor Statistics as well. If you guys don't remember, 0% job growth for pharmacy, and it's really rough for pharmacy in terms of jobs. Now, some of the other things I actually looked at was registered nurses, where their job outlook is a lot better, 12%. There's a lot of need for registered nurses. And plus, you have the opportunity to go into nurse practitioners. I have a few nurse practitioner friends, super happy, super fulfilled with their life. Yes, it's tough, but it's stimulating as well. So there's a 12% job growth. Obviously, pay isn't as high, but it depends from area to area. I actually know a few nurses that make more than pharmacists out here in the LA area. But also, there's going to be over 371K employment change over the next 10 years as well. So that is something important to consider. But let's take a look at optometry, which is also popular. Pays a lot of money, about 100, you're also 6 figures. You get your doctorate. Those are some great benefits. And there's a 10% job outlook as well. And only going to be about 4,000. Now, are you guaranteed a job with optometry? Not necessarily. And plus, one thing that you got to realize too, during the whole COVID pandemic, a lot of these optometrists were actually furloughed and could not find a job. I know a few that were struggling of my personal friends, and maybe I'll bring them onto the channel if it makes sense. Now, the number one thing that I would recommend would actually be physician assistants. Now, pretty much almost all my physician assistant friends are super happy. They feel super fulfilled. I have a few friends that work in urgent care, and they're basically practitioners in the clinic as well. And there's tons of different areas. Like, for example, one of my friends, good friends, she actually does plastic surgery and cosmetics and whatnot. And they make a lot of freaking money. She feels super fulfilled. There's a lot of variety in here. So you're not limited. And plus, also 6 figures per year, master's degree. And also, more importantly, there's tons of jobs, 31%, much faster than average. Hopefully what happened to pharmacy back in the day doesn't happen to something like physician assistants, but at the current moment, take a look. Make sure you look at the numbers. I taught you how to do it. So let's go into the second point. So let's go into the second solution. Maybe you're just like, Kevin, you're wrong. I'm so passionate about doing pharmacy. Even though there's this data in front of my face, I still want to do pharmacy because I believe that I can really move pharmacy forward. And that's great. We need more people like that. We don't need just average people going to pharmacy. We need more progressive people as well. So if you want to beat your odds, what is one thing that I would suggest? Well, I would suggest going in with a specific field in mind and really building a game plan about that. Now, you're probably wondering, okay, Kevin, what sort of careers can I do in pharmacy as well, right? Do I want to be a community pharmacist? Most likely that's where all the jobs are, but I know a lot of pharmacy students and a lot of pharmacists who are working, they're always looking for a way out of community. So what are some other non-traditional careers that you can look at? Well, funny thing, my friend Alex Barker, he actually has a ultimate guide to pharmacy career opportunities where he breaks down all the different types of pharmacy that you can do with 48 different types of pharmacy that you can go in. Take a look at this. Maybe one of these careers will speak to you. And what I would recommend is reaching out. I actually have a separate video, which I'll link in one of the corners if I haven't done it already, about how to really talk to someone and how to get the homie hookup and really network with people in these careers as well. I've actually helped out a lot of my pharmacy students or pharmacy mentees with contacting people as well. So if you need help, feel free to reach out. Now, so why is it important for you to go specific? Now, you actually build out a game plan for a specific field in pharmacy so you can meet the right people and really plan out your pharmacy school career in order to put yourself in the highest percentages of getting that specific job earlier. Now, the third thing, if you're watching this, you're probably wondering like, hey, I'm not sure if I want to do healthcare. I'm not sure if I really want to do pharmacy after everything that you threw at me. I don't know what I want. And my best advice to you is don't force it. Maybe your parents or friends are telling you, or family are telling you should do pharmacy. But the truth is, they're not the ones that have to go through school. They're not the ones who are going to be struggling finding a job. At the end of the day, you should really focus on something that satisfies your ideal life, where you want to be. Could be a business, could be another job, could be some remote work, but don't stay stuck to pharmacy. And that's the number one thing. Even if you're struggling in retail pharmacy or community pharmacy at the moment, don't pigeonhole yourself just as a pharmacist. It's pretty interesting for myself. I feel very strongly about this because one of the things that I dove into was digital marketing consulting, sales, high ticket sales, and picked up a lot of different skills along the way. I'm even looking into rental arbitrage and doing day trading as well. And so don't forget, you can always rebuild yourself or rewire your success as well. You shouldn't let anyone tell you what you want at the end of the day. At the end of the day, you have a choice and you can choose what you want to master in life. Well, that's pretty much it. Let me know. Are you still considering pharmacy after these points? Are there any other things, other factors that you should consider if you are considering pharmacy? If you disagree, let me know. Let's keep it civil as well, and I will talk to you guys later. Also, make sure to like, comment, subscribe. If you want to stay connected, you can connect with me at refugeehustle.com/join, where you can shoot me questions and we can have a more personal interaction as well. All right, that's pretty much it. Kevin Yee out.